let's talk a little bit more about writing, because something I wanted to talk with you about. We were just chatting with Stephen K. Smith last week. We had Daniel Kenny on not that long before. I talked with Susan K. Quinn. I'm a big believer in talking with as many self-published, indie-published authors as I can, as well as many traditionally published authors as I can, because at the end of the day, I don't swear allegiance to publishing models. I don't care how a book is published, so long as it's well published. The readers that receive that book are happy, the writer's happy. If that's happening, then everybody wins. That's all gravy to me. You had self-published originally. You'd self-published, what was it? The Living in Shadow Stories, right? And you went from that to well-published, in quotes. I took that from your bio, with fake IDs. So what was the process of going from one market to the other?
Well, so I always felt like if I'm going to be in this business, I need to know all aspects of the business. And there was a time when I wasn't able to make any headway into big New York publishing. And my thing was, I never was going to let some stranger in New York determine my fate. So I always had these projects that I knew I wanted to try to self-publish more than anything as an education. When I did Live Again, when I did the Shadows Gallery and the other stuff that I self-published, I wanted to learn how the process works. So I sort of viewed those as experiments. I taught myself Photoshop to design covers. I taught myself how to do some layout. I'm not saying I'm an expert at it. There are things I would certainly change now if I did it again, but it was more so me trying to educate myself and have an avenue to publish if nothing else worked out. And I don't mean to say that like something's wrong with self-publishing. I just knew I had some stories I felt I wanted to have more control over than what I was trying to sell to New York. Because this is the truth about big time New York publishing. You don't always have as much control as people think. I'm very much locked into writing young adult thrillers. That's what most of my publishers want from me. That may change if Last Day is successful, but I always knew I wanted to write more things than that. And I wanted avenues to do that if I ever had a story that I didn't want big publishing controlling. And so to me, it wasn't so much going from self-publishing to traditional. It's that I know both of them and I want to self-publish again when I have time. Time is just a huge factor right now for me to get that stuff together.
What did you learn self-publishing that you couldn't learn just sending out queries to the void? And what is it about self-publishing that makes you want to go back?
Well, what I learned is that copy editors are very valuable.
They are essential, yes, sir.
You can. It's tempting to be a one-man show, and my self-publishing period, that's what I was. But I understand the difficulty in trying to do everything yourself. And so what I learned from self-publishing is that you need to be able to set aside some funds in order to bring in people that can help, whatever your budget is. I know it can get fairly expensive, so you kind of got to find a sweet spot that works for you. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of the question?
Also, what would bring you back to self-publishing? You mentioned if you weren't so darn busy promoting the books that have been traditionally published, you might be interested in doing it again at some point.
Yeah, I want to come because I started out as a horror writer. Like I wanted to be Stephen King, and I think I liked having the control over stories like that I wouldn't necessarily have if I had to go through a traditional publisher. And so I still got some like fairly dark, scary ideas that I want to put out into the world eventually that I don't necessarily want to sell to New York. So should I get the time and opportunity, I may do that again at some point.
Would that be under your kid-friendly Lamar Giles name, or would you be looking at a pen name at that point?
I don't know, because when I was doing self-publishing, I was Lamar Giles, so I was using my initials. So I don't know if I would just go back to that. I have to really consider it because when I came into children's publishing, there was a lot of discussion between me and editors about like, do you want to use your first name? Do you want to go with the initials? And I felt like it was better to keep my adult scary stuff separate from the young adult stuff. It felt like just a separate start. So I may just go back to my initials, and it's the return of Lamar Giles.
That's something that's cracking me up with Maurice Broaddus, who's written some of the most terrifying stories I've ever read. and who wrote the oh gosh, he's gonna kick my butt when he sees me because I can't remember the name of his King Arthur trilogy. But really dark stuff. He's got a slight spoiler. He's got a girl chewing razor blades at one point. And he's gone from that. Now he's got The Usual Suspects coming out here in May. This is very kid friendly, very middle grade. And it's just like, oh, from the author of the razor blade story comes nice middle grade story just for you.
I've thought about this quite a bit, and I may actually backtrack on that answer because I recall, I think it was Dean Koontz who talked about all the stuff that he wrote under pen names before he became Dean Koontz. And I believe I saw him say he wishes he'd always used his name because there's power in using your real name. So I don't know. I think maybe Maurice is onto something. Maybe it's better to just keep your name no matter what you're doing and just make people understand that you have many facets.
Yeah, I've found just to make it easy, I'm not hiding. I've got, my middle grade and my horror stories both behind me here. But I found just saying Robert Kent for the horror stuff, Rob Kent for the kitty stuff, just makes a nice clear break that, okay, I can probably read Banneker Bones and the Giant Robot Bees, and there's not going to be a character named Sexy Jesus that brings prophecy of flying saucers, which you are going to run into in the Book of David, and you're certainly not going to run into any kind of profanity. So let's talk about your experience self-publishing versus now traditionally publishing. I was just, where to set your arc? I was just looking at the back of your arc here and the national marketing and publicity campaign that your publisher is providing for you. They've got you at conference promotions. You just got back from Hong Kong talking about Spin. You told me you're going to be here in Indianapolis Saturday, yes?
Yes, that's correct. I'm going to be at RosieCon.
So those of you Indianapolis native listeners, if you can get to RosieCon, go to RosieCon. I'm going to see if I can get to RosieCon, and maybe we'll both be there to say hello.
Yeah,
what is your traditional publisher doing for you that you weren't able to do when you were self-publishing?
Well, there are many things that I probably couldn't have pulled off on my own. One, I think you mentioned conference promotion. So this is something I wasn't even aware of when I was self-publishing, or even through my first 2 traditionally published novels, which were with a different publisher. I didn't realize there were all these industry conferences all throughout the year, where particularly in children's books, where you can go and talk to educators, librarians, booksellers. And if your publisher wants to support your book to those audiences, they'll send you there. I didn't know that was a thing until I got into traditional publishing, and I published my 3rd novel, Overturned. I was so ignorant to it that when that publisher was like, yeah, Lamar, we're going to send you to the Decatur Book Festival for you to promote Overturned, I asked them, like, well, how much of that do I need to pay? Because I need to budget if it's expensive. And they were like, no, we send you. We cover that because we want you in front of these audiences to speak. That's something, like I said, I didn't know. I couldn't have pulled off in self-publishing because it becomes a thing where I think the conference organizers only have a certain amount of slots. So the publisher sort of has to pitch you to them. And also the expense of it. Those trips can easily run into a couple of $1,000s when you're talking about plane tickets and hotel rooms and food. And that's just blew my mind that when a publisher has faith in you, they'll send you to these places to help you expand your audience. With Last Day, we're going on tour. And this will be my first time going on an official tour. And I think we're going to have like a tour bus. And we're going to go city to city for like 6 days, like the Beatles or something. And that's mind blowing to me. Again, the expense of that, if you were on your own, you're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars. So I think that's a huge difference. And it's unfortunate that the access to that sort of thing becomes limited by personal finance. I couldn't do it on my own.
And that's something that even those that are traditionally published aren't necessarily experiencing.
Yep.
You really have to be an author of the caliber of Lamar Giles to get that full experience. Although this isn't your first rodeo, because you've got how many books out now? Is this number 7 or number 8?
Traditionally published, Last Day will be number 5, I think. Yeah, but I've got another one coming out next year, and so and we're actually going to do a sequel to Last Day. So that'll be cool. But yeah, it's not my first time out, but like all my time on the road has typically been either like one-off situations, not like a tour. And like I don't think people always understand that. Like a tour is like a really concentrated period of time, right around the book's release, to kind of get you out in front of people right away. I think a lot of that helps if the publisher wants the book to appear on, say, like the New York Times bestseller list, that sort of thing. But I have spent a lot of time on the road, just in one-off situations, to promote the various books.
Yeah, I'm not able to get on the road as much as I'd like to, which is one reason why I'm forever doing these online events. Because I'm out there on the weekends, weekend warrior, but during the week I've got my 5-year-old. And if I'm going to a book signing, he's probably coming with me, and he is not amenable to meeting bunches of strangers.
And that's the beauty, but that's the beauty of like our digital media, social media. It allows for people to reach audiences when they can't pull off like going on the road to these conferences. Like I said, I couldn't do it on my own. And I totally respect like people using their online platform to get the word out. I mean, it's pretty much all we have when we're trying to do it ourselves.